The champagne exploded against my temple. Glass and fizz splattered across my vision, and for a few seconds, I couldn't tell if it was the bubbles or blood trailing down my face. Silence fell over the Bellamy estate. I was still standing, barely. And they were all watching. My name is Gideon Marris, 47, forensic auditor. That night, at my older brother's birthday celebration, I learned that being born into wealth doesn't mean you belong to it. The ornate chandelier above glittered like judgment. My fingers trembled as they touched my brow, red. I left without a word. But I was done pretending to be part of this family. The estate in Northcrest had always felt like a stage set for someone else's life. Gilded mirrors, polished marble floors, vases that probably cost more than my annual salary. And tonight? The party looked like a presidential fundraiser. My brother, Branson Marris, turned 50. He stood like a king, laughing beneath the archway with his wife Celeste, surrounded by business sharks in designer suits. If you didn't know better, you'd think he ran the country. I walked in quietly, adjusting my one good navy suit. The same one I wore to my father's funeral and my divorce hearing. I caught a few nods, the kind you give someone at a wedding you don't really want at your table. Gideon, Celeste called, feigning warmth. Her red gown shimmered like danger. You made it. I did, I said, accepting a glass of champagne I hadn't ordered. No one asked what I wanted. They never did. Branson's looking for you, she added, eyes already scanning the crowd behind me. I found him moments later, glass of whiskey in hand, grin wide as Texas. Little brother, he bellowed, pulling me into a side hug that smelled of leather and control. Knew you couldn't resist. Wouldn't miss it, I lied. His eyes flicked to my shirt cuffs, a millimeter too frayed. His smile twitched. No comment. He guided me down a hall lined with oil portraits of our ancestors, men with eyes like hawks and lips like iron. The air smelled like secrets and cedar. Inside a quiet lounge, Branson poured bourbon into 2 crystal tumblers. To family, he toasted. I raised mine, clinked, and drank. He didn't waste time. Spoke to mother last week, he said, swirling his drink. We talked about the Midtown place. I tensed. That was my condo, the one Dad left to me after the crash. She thinks I should take it over, Branson continued casually. Consolidate the assets. I set my glass down, sharp. It's not up for consolidation. I live there. He smiled, all teeth, no warmth. Sure. For now. But I need to be closer to my new development sites. Practical, I said through my teeth. For you. She thinks it's best. Of course she did. The door creaked. Celeste entered, steps slow and calculated. Everything all right in here, she cooed. We're just discussing logistics, Branson said with mock innocence. It makes sense, Celeste added smoothly. You don't even use the rooftop anymore. I use my home, I replied firmly. And it's staying mine. Silence. Thick. That's when it happened. From the far corner of the room, where I hadn't noticed him, Marcus, Branson's assistant, or bodyguard, or attack dog, stepped forward. One smooth, silent movement. He grabbed the champagne bottle. Swung it like he'd done it before. Crash. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Shards hit the floor. Warmth rolled down my temple. Celeste didn't scream. Branson didn't flinch. They all just stared. I straightened, wiped the blood from my face, and looked them in the eyes. Thanks for the party, I said. Calm. Steady. Like it was just another Tuesday. Then I walked out, leaving a trail of blood and broken illusions behind me. The apartment was cold the next morning. Thin light leaked through the blinds, slicing across towers of paperwork I hadn't touched in weeks. My head pulsed from the bottle blow, the bruise blooming across my temple like spilled ink. I stared at the blood stain on my shirt collar. It hadn't come out. Maybe it never would. I sat in silence, the old dining table now a battlefield. Stacks of documents, dusty folders, half-empty mugs, and in the middle of it all, the deed to my condo. My fingers ran along the embossed name. Gideon Marris. My name. My signature. But something didn't feel right. The ink was slightly off, hurried, crooked, not how I normally signed my name. I flipped the page. 5608, Main Street. My address was 5620. My gut twisted. Maybe a typo. Maybe not. I opened more files. More inconsistencies. A notary stamp dated 2 days after the signature. My mind reeled. I couldn't remember signing anything in that week. Not for the life of me. At the bottom of the pile, buried beneath receipts and tax slips, I found a business card. Harlan Vexler. Corporate law specialist. Midtown. I hadn't seen Harlan in over 2 years. Last time was at a charity dinner, cigars, jazz, and a handshake like a steel vice. I tapped the card against the table, then dialed. Vexler. His voice came on rough and dry, like someone who smoked cigars before breakfast. Harlan. It's Gideon Marris. A pause. Then a chuckle. Well, I'll be damned. They finally pushed you too far. You could say that. What's the damage? I hesitated, my fingers brushing against the silver pocket watch on my desk, the one Dad gave me when I turned 30. Still ticking. Still mine. I think my condo deed was altered. Harlan didn't laugh. He went quiet. Come in today, he said. Bring everything. Harlan's office smelled like old leather and sealed deals. Mahogany shelves lined the walls. Every book looked heavy and expensive. His desk was covered in manila folders, brass pens, and a framed photo of him shaking hands with someone important. He greeted me with that signature grin, a half smirk, half threat. Sit. Let's see how deep this rabbit hole goes. I handed him the file. He flipped through page by page, his fingers slow and deliberate. This, he muttered, tapping a notary page, is garbage. Whoever did this forgot how timestamps work. He turned to another page. And this address error? That's not a typo. That's a misdirection. It voids the transfer completely. You technically still own it, legally. My shoulders dropped slightly. A breath I didn't know I was holding slipped out. What about the estate? I asked. The house in Northcrest. The one Branson and Celeste prance around in like royalty. Harlan paused. He reached for another folder, thick, cream-colored paper, older than the rest. Marris Family Trust. 1988. He laid it flat. According to this, your father left the Northcrest estate to you. What? They never filed the transfer correctly. Your brother and his wife. They've been squatting in your house for years. You're the legal owner. I stared at the document. It hit me like a punch to the ribs. That mansion, the place I was always made to feel like a guest in, it was mine. They'd locked me out of my own inheritance. My hands clenched into fists. I want it back. Harlan grinned. That, he said, is the first thing you've said all day that sounds like your father. The next week blurred into strategy, meetings, document pulls, and notarized letters. Harlan and his paralegal worked like wolves, meticulous, ruthless, and fast. We filed for legal ownership of the estate. We reviewed financial transfers, forged notary stamps, outdated deed claims. By the end of the week, I had 2 weapons. 1, an ownership claim on the mansion. 2, evidence of forged signatures and illegal attempts to transfer my property. But Harlan wasn't done. He slid a new folder across the desk. "This is the detonator." Inside were financial documents, 6 years' worth of quiet siphoning from Marris Global Holdings, Branson's company. $10,000 here. $60,000 there. Hidden inside dummy LLCs and offshore accounts. Names like Cypress Vale and Rivercore Capital. All traced back to Celeste and Branson. My jaw clenched. This is enough to bury them. No, Harlan said, eyes gleaming. This is enough to own them. That night, I sat at my desk. The silver pocket watch ticked beside me. For the first time in years, I felt grounded, not because I was winning yet, but because I finally understood the game. They wanted me out. Now I was walking back in. And this time, I brought fire. The sky over Northcrest was a sheet of pale gray as I pulled up to the gates of the Marris estate, my estate. For the first time, I didn't wait for them to open it for me. I stepped out of the car, walked up, and pushed the iron gates open myself. The hinges groaned in protest, like the house knew I wasn't here for pleasantries. The driveway curved around sculpted hedges and fountains that hadn't flowed in months. The illusion was cracking. Inside, the grand foyer was just as pristine as ever, but it felt different now. The chandeliers sparkled too brightly, the furniture too stiff. It wasn't home. It was a museum built on a lie. And I had come to close the exhibit. Celeste met me halfway down the hallway in a tailored pearl gray dress, her smile a weapon. "Gideon," she said sweetly. "You look determined." "Not here for small talk," I replied. She guided me into the formal parlor, where the rest of the family waited like players at a rigged poker table. Branson stood by the window, hands behind his back, pretending not to care. His lawyer, Victor, sat beside him, cold eyes, thinner tie. Celeste sat across from me. A heavy manila envelope rested on the table between us. "Just a few formalities," she said, sliding it forward. "If you sign, we'll arrange a smooth transition out of the condo. We've even added a relocation stipend." I didn't even touch it. Instead, I reached for my briefcase, popped it open, and placed a crisp blue folder directly in front of her. "What's this?" she asked, hesitating. "Proof," I said. "The Northcrest estate, this house, belongs to me. It always has." Victor snorted, but his hands moved, flipping pages. His expression darkened with each turn. Branson finally spoke. "What kind of stunt are you pulling, Gideon?" "No stunt," I said. "Your signatures don't hold water. Your notary is a fraud. And this mansion? You've been living in it under false pretenses for years. The trust never legally transferred ownership to you. Which makes your stay here." I turned to Victor. "How would you phrase it?" Victor didn't answer. His silence said enough. Celeste's face was pale now. That can't be." "Oh, but it is." She reached for the wineglass beside her. It slipped from her grip, crashed to the floor. Red spread across the rug like blood. I stood slowly. "You don't need to move out today. But the paperwork is being filed as we speak. You'll receive formal notice by the end of the week." Branson took a step forward, fists clenched. "You think you're clever?" "No," I said. "I think I'm owed." I turned toward the door, briefcase in hand. I paused. "Oh, and Celeste?" She looked up, eyes glassy. I smiled. "It's just business." And I walked out. That night, I watched the sun set over Midtown, a mug of black coffee in one hand and the silver pocket watch in the other. Its ticking felt louder than usual. Stronger. At 10:42 p.m., I received an email from Harlan with a single sentence. "They cracked the glass, but they're still smiling for the camera." Attached was a photo, Branson and Celeste, standing outside Marris Global Holdings, giving a statement to reporters. Pinned smiles. Shaky hands. They were trying to act like it was business as usual. They were wrong. The next morning, I met Harlan at a downtown cafe, one of those spots where senators and snakes did deals over lattes. He slid a new folder across the table. Bank records. Transfers. Fraud. The evidence of embezzlement was airtight. They hadn't just tried to steal my condo. They had been funneling money from the family's holdings for years. How long do they have? I asked. Couple of weeks if they keep dancing. A couple of days if we go public. I took a deep breath. Then let's go public. Harlan raised his coffee in a silent toast. To burning glass houses. That evening, I sent out the statement to every major financial journalist in the region. I didn't hide behind a lawyer. I put my name on it. As the rightful heir to the Marris estate and holdings, I can no longer remain silent. The truth is simple. I was misled. My signature was forged. My property was nearly stolen. And worst of all, the people responsible were family. By morning, the story was everywhere. Talk shows. News tickers. LinkedIn posts. Anonymous tips started pouring in. Old employees. Past partners. Silent victims. Turns out, I wasn't the only one Branson had betrayed. By the time the dust settled, the Marris name was everywhere, but not in the way Branson had built it. News anchors dissected the scandal with glee. Fraud. Embezzlement. Misuse of family trust funds. Branson and Celeste stood before microphones outside the courthouse, smiling like they still believed charm could clean blood off marble. But I didn't watch it live. I already knew how it ended. They were finished. 2 days later, I stood at the gates of the estate. No, my estate. The wind rustled through overgrown ivy and cracked flower beds. The mansion sat still and silent, like it was waiting for someone worthy to walk through it again. Behind me, Harlan stepped out of his car. He tossed me a large iron key, the kind you only saw in movies or locked diaries. "It's all yours now, Gideon," he said. I turned it in my hand, heavy, real. I walked forward. The old front doors moaned as I pushed them open. Dust swirled in the sunlight. The house didn't breathe until I stepped in. It felt hollow. Not from the absence of people, but from the absence of purpose. That's when I decided. This place wouldn't just be reclaimed. It would be reborn. Over the next month, I worked like a man on fire. Contractors arrived with tool belts and blueprints. I walked the halls with Harlan every morning, mapping out what to strip, what to keep, and what to completely destroy. We ripped out the velvet chairs. Tore down the oil portraits. The study where Branson once whispered lies became a legal resource center. The grand ballroom, once used for backroom deals, became a community library. People came, not investors or elites, but volunteers. Locals. Retired teachers. Students. Some had been wronged by the Marris family. Others just believed in what we were building. We scrubbed the floors until they shone. We painted the walls in colors that breathed. We planted lavender and marigolds where there had been weeds and secrets. One afternoon, while clearing the attic, I found something strange beneath a stack of dusty fabric. A second silver pocket watch. Scratched. Slightly rusted. Still ticking. I turned it over. WHM, Walter Hayes Marris. My father. It was his. The original. The one he lost. And somehow, it had found its way back. The day the new sign went up, the sun burned through weeks of cloud. Marris House, a community trust. A crowd gathered at the gates. People who remembered what this house once symbolized, and what it had become. Harlan stood beside me in a gray suit, arms crossed and grin wide. "You sure about this?" he asked. I nodded. "This is what it should have always been." He handed me a pair of oversized scissors. The ribbon stretched across the entrance. Two local kids, one in a scout uniform, one in church clothes, held it tight. I bent to their level. "Ready?" They nodded. Snip. Applause erupted. Inside, families poured through the front doors. Mothers holding toddlers. Grandparents leaning on canes. College kids with notebooks and headphones. The Marris estate, once a symbol of greed, had become a hub of healing. In the East Wing, where Branson once hosted cigar nights, we built a small memorial. A bronze plaque beneath a glass case. Inside the case, two silver pocket watches, ticking side by side. A small note read, "Time can be stolen, but purpose must be earned. In memory of Walter H. Marris. In honor of redemption." I stood by the window as dusk settled. The garden buzzed with laughter. Someone played music from their phone. A boy rode a scooter past the front steps. It was no longer mine. It was ours. Harlan stepped beside me. "You did it." "No," I said, smiling as the silver watch ticked softly in my pocket. "We did." Sometimes revenge isn't loud. Sometimes, it's quiet. Measured. Legal. And permanent. I didn't take back what they stole. I built something better in its place. And I'll be damned if I let anyone take it again. Hit that like button if you've ever had to choose peace over pain. Subscribe for more real stories of resilience, revenge, and rising above. And if you've ever been discarded, ignored, or underestimated, drop a comment, let the world know. You're still standing. You're still rising. And your story's not over yet.